Hello everyone, this is Christian Maledicton Interactive, and in this video we are going to see 3 different ways to include font awesome icons in our projects. We'll start off with the easiest, which is to include everything, which will increase the size of our bundles to a size that's not appropriate for a web application. But by the time that we're done, we'll see how to bring the size of everything down to effectively as minimal as possible. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started here. So as a baseline, if we take a look at, to start off, we have our main.js file, and the size of that is 5.54 kilobytes. That's basically just the overhead of using Webpack. So the easiest way to start, and I guess I should say I have 2 tabs here, one just showing the page, the other one showing the page but using browser sync, so it'll automatically refresh for us. So if we go into our main.ts file, of course the easiest way to include these icons or everything styling and all that is just to include an entire package. But if we take a look now, we'll see that our JavaScript now is up to over a megabyte in size. But for that price, then we can just say FAS, so font awesome will look for that class, and then it'll look for another class to tell it which icon, and then let's just scale it a little bit. We save that. Now we have a camera icon on there, and it's very simple, right? Just include that entire package, and then just type in whatever you want related to the font awesome, and it'll put the appropriate icon on there. Of course, this might be appropriate for prototyping, or maybe even if you're using or creating a desktop application, maybe Electron or something. But of course, with a web application, 1 megabyte to include these icons is not really a viable option. So one thing that we can do to start with is to trim this down. Let's get rid of this, save it. Our camera will disappear. So font awesome starts off giving us some ability to shrink this a little bit. So if we import the DOM and library from the core, of course we'll need our icon again. Where's our camera? From there we take the library, add, and put our camera in there. Nothing will happen until we say dom.watch. Save that, and our icon is back, and our size now is 889 kilobytes, so it's a low 20% reduction in the size, so that's of course a good thing, but we can do even better. Let's go ahead and delete that stuff and save it. And if we were to have taken a look, which of course I guess I can still, but why bother, since we'll come over here. If we were to have taken a look at the SVG that was printed out in the browser, we would have seen this stuff, right? A few properties on it, some data dash prefixes or attributes here related to what font awesome did, and then we have the path. So if I save that, go back to browser sync version, we'll see that we have our icon, but of course it's all out of whack as far as the size goes, because when we use the JavaScript, font awesome took care of some styling for us as well. So along with that path, or that SVG information, oops, come on. If we would have also taken a look at the styling, we would have seen this styling. The 2 up here are related to all icons, and these 2 down here are for sort of specific ones. In this case, this one's setting the width, so each icon on here has a class on it for the width. I think they range from like 10 to 20, so the width of course would then just be whatever the width number is. So for instance 10 divided by 16, that would give us the EM. Using the scaling here, so 3x turns into 3EM. So if I save that, our icon goes back to the size that it was previously. So of course copying and pasting this stuff is not really a viable solution. So we'll break this up into parts. The first part is we'll deal with this path here. So if we deal with that path, what we're going to do, create a new file here, called it icons.js. So go into our icons, and the way that we're going to handle this is by printing a couple of files. So let's import a few things here. So we'll use fs to print the files for node, path to tell it where we want our icons for our solid icons. Then we have this other package, this SVG, Font Awesome SVG sprite generator. And incidentally, you can find a link in the description of below to go to where I've written the code down on my website. And you can see then the code, of course, and then the version of the packages I'm using. And so now let's create a sprite, which is the sprite.generate. And this will take in an array and fas.camera. So we have our camera. Let's go ahead and print this out. So write file where. So we'll join the dir name, and I called it icons.svg. Data to print out is sprite.svg. If we have an error, let's just if error, we'll throw error. So that'll give us our paths. The other thing, there's a little bit more information that we can get from, that we can print out from our sprite. Dir name fa.json. That we'll get from json.stringify. That's attributes. Let's make it a little prettier to look at. And again, if we have that error, yeah, error, throw error. We save that. All we have to do now, I've already been testing it here. I've got my node, and then we will have a path, relative path to that file we just created. If we hit enter, we should be good there. And if we check, we now have two files. So we have our SVG file here. Of course, it creates the SVG, which contains our symbol, which then has the path, right? The path information that we were looking for. You can also look in here. So we have our attributes printed out. It's an object with a key related to the ID for each icon. So we have a class and the view box information. So we'll make use of all of this information later on. But now we're able to come in here, and just to make sure I do not mistype it, I guess what I did was we can keep a lot of this, the data dash stuff we can get rid of. And then this one was also Font Awesome. And then to print our camera, let's go ahead. You can see that it's working. If we save that, camera goes away. Now if we just use and the href, so I'm just serving from that folder, and then we have the ID for the camera. So now our camera is back. So we've taken care of the problem of having to deal with generating paths, right? Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. There's a couple of things that are up here that are dependent on the camera itself and that kind of stuff. So let's create a way to generate this information without having to copy and paste. So in this case, I'm using Pug. So we have the ability to create a mix-in. I imagine most frameworks have a way of doing it. For ASP.NET, we would have maybe a tag helper. So let's create this mix-in. So mix-in FA icon, we'll pass in an ID, a width, and a scale. And it's basically, let me just copy this stuff in. So since I'm in Bug, I have access to JavaScript, so we'll create our href, right? Passing in the ID. The class, what I'm going to do is add the ID to it. So we have this FA camera up here. So this is not exactly the same thing as fas.fa camera, but it will give us a way to style it if we ever wanted to. We're going to tell it the width, and we're going to pass in the scale. We'll generate the information related to the view box. So the width for the view box was again dependent on the width of the icon, which in our case was a 16, so that's why it came out to be 512. And then we'll have that actual view box width, and so that will just generate our icon. Again, save it. And this, now all we have to do is say, hey, I want an icon, the ID, width, and scale. Apparently it's past my bedtime. So if you do that, now we have our camera back. And one thing also to move on to here is the styling. So as I mentioned here, you can have icons of different styles or sizes. You can obviously have icons that you scale differently. So in our SCSS, let's also make use of a couple of mix-ins here. So if I generate, I'll have a fun awesome class, which will basically give me the class with the width. And then we have a scale one, which will, of course, give me the scale. So if we get rid of that stuff and save it, our icon scales improperly again. But if we now use our mix-ins, we get our icon back. Now, I actually don't want to, if we can take a look actually, CSS, we can see that we've generated it once again, but you know, it's probably not worth saving the size by just typing in each one you want. So let's just generate a few of them. So we'll go from 10 to 20, and then we'll have scales from 1 to 10. So if I save that, if we look at our CSS again, we'll see that we can handle icons with width from 10 to 20 and scales from 1 to 10. All right, so that'll handle, well, for the moment it'll handle the CSS. We'll come back to it here in a second. So we do have a problem, maybe. Let's say, for instance, instead of wanting a size of 3, we wanted a scale, a scale of 2.5. Now I'm not even sure actually if that's a legitimate, like, pass the test if you wanted to lint the HTML, but of course if you go in and try and put a decimal point in your CSS, you're going to have a problem. So let's deal with the fact that we want a scale that may be a decimal number. So to do that, what we'll do is modify, we'll come up with this scale string. So if we have our scale, let's put it here, I guess. Since I'm using JavaScript, we can just replace periods with underscores. Instead of putting scale, we'll use our string. Now we have 2_5. And the other thing to handle is, of course, our icon is now tiny. So let's handle our CSS side of things and create a function here. Now I've copied and pasted this function forever from different projects, so I have no idea where I got it from. I did not create it. I don't know inner workings of SAS to know which functions we can use and all that stuff, but it's basically just the string replace that we're using in JavaScript. So now we do the same thing. For our scale mix in, create our variable here, and now instead of scale, we'll pass in scale string, I probably would not include, I mean, that's up to you, right? I wouldn't normally include the decimal numbers in sort of loops. So if we just include that 2.5, you could, of course, include it if you like. And that was supposed to work. Why did we not work this time? Did I make it 2.5? I did. 2_5. Let's look at our CSS again. 2.5, because I messed it up. So I'm also supposed to. That's what I get for talking and not paying attention. So this one was supposed to be the scale, and this one was supposed to be, no, this one. That's supposed to be scale string. Okay, so now that's working. So now we can handle fractional scaling as well, and we've cut down the size. We were using a mixin to generate our icon. So anytime we have the ability to create a mixin or tag helper or whatever, and we can use that. And what we're looking at here is properly scaled icon that we're including. We're back down to our JavaScript size, right? 'Cause we have no JavaScript. And what we've done is, I didn't really pay attention to the size of the CSS. Of course, it's a little bit larger. And we're having just under 1 kilobyte worth of SVG for this one icon. But I think that's probably acceptable. Of course, that'll get larger as we include icons. And in the next video, what we'll do is create a way to do basically what Font Awesome was doing, along with our other underlying framework here. We've handled the styling. And so we'll create JavaScript, which we can then put our I tag on there, put the appropriate classes, and then say have it replaced with the SVG using JavaScript. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see that in the next video. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.